All right, we are here for the Gridiron tournament. So I'll do a little walkthrough here. We'll go check out these holes for this new tournament that we've got. These are all of these holes that are in this tournament are from the Santa Ventura and Juniper Point. So we're talking about Tour 2. So that means all of these holes you can play with pretty much any ball. Now, there's some of the holes that if you want, we're playing in a tournament. So if we were playing one-on-one, we'd be playing these normally with a white ball or a marlin. But during the tournament, there are a few of these holes that we're going to pump up the ball. And hole number one is one of those holes where there's a couple ways to come at this hole. The consistent way is you can actually just come out here with a quarterback. You do not have to get very far out here, and you're going to try and end up somewhere about in that area, and that's going to give you a wood shot straight to the green. It's very consistent. It gives you a legitimate albatross shot every time you come here, but it's with your wood. So you're from somewhere up in this area right here. You're not taking any risks at all. You're basically just doing a pure layup shot there. It's best if you bring your second club, something that's got really good ball guide. That'll help you out. So if you've got a higher developed sniper, but whatever wood you have that's got the best ball guide, you don't have to use a lot of stuff on this second shot to get up to the green. The other way you can come at this hole, there is a max overpower hook shot that you can do from over here, and it's going to land you in this spot, and your goal is to get up here in front so that you have a chip in for albatross, or even being on the green. Any place that you can get above that line, or anywhere that you can get really above this peninsula. If you're on that side of the peninsula, you're in your short iron range. Anywhere in front of this line, you're probably in your wedge range. So if you can get up there, you're going to greatly increase the odds that you can get an albatross here. So your choice to get way up there in the front is to practice this max overpower hook shot that you can do from back over here. Now, the last time this was in a tournament, this hole was in a tournament, I was trying to achieve this with just a regular 3-power ball, and I kept ending up down in this area right here. I was in my long iron range as opposed to my wood range from back here, and it was a pretty consistent shot, but I wasn't able to get my ball to come up into here, and it was because I was using a 3-power ball. So if we up this to a 4-power or a 5-power ball, you can easily get up into this area up here where you have a super great shot for albatross. So this may be one of those holes that we want to pop out one of those balls. The problem is that you're going to have to practice this shot to find the landing zone out here so that you can get this consistent. So I will usually use the transitions between the cuts as points of reference for my ball guide, and pick a spot out here and take the shot and see where it ends up out here, and you'll know whether you need to, if you started off where your white ring was or your blue ring was up against this transition right here, and you hit and you end up out here, then you need to move the ball this way in order to bring it back into the fairway. If you find yourself out here, you're going to need to move the ball this way in order to bring it back out into the fairway. So you'll have to take this shot 2 or 3 times in order to dial in what is the right spot out here and how to set your ball up out here. If the wind is going in this direction, you're probably going to leave the wind in. If the wind is going in any kind of a side direction, you're probably going to want to take the wind out in order to eliminate that variable. But this is definitely a hole you're going to have to practice on depending on what ball you're using. So if you're using a 4-power ball, your spot out here is going to be slightly different. So if you're using a 5-power ball, you're going to be out here further, which means that your landing zone, it's going to affect your landing zone. So you have to, whatever ball you pick, you got to be willing to burn some of those balls when you get to this hole to practice that shot. The other way that you can go at it is you can come out here with an extra mile or one of your bigger clubs, and you can try and just blast it out into this area. Just try and make the bend around this corner. And you're going to see a lot of people do that, where they start out here and they're doing a max overpower shot, and they're not trying to do the max hook, they're just trying to end up out in this area. If you're using a big enough power ball, you could end up past this peninsula. But you're going to see a lot of people in the tournament that are they're landing their finish areas right in here. That's where they're looking to get to. That way they're in their long iron range. But if you do have the balls to burn and you can work out this max overpower shot out here, you do have a shot of ending up down in this area and have a super, super legitimate shot for albatross. So this is definitely going to be a hole as the tournament goes on that we're going to continue to work on. And it'll just depend on, you know, how many balls I'm willing to burn on this hole to get the landing spot down. Hole number 2. Now this is one, you know, there's 3 ways to play this hole. You're going to see some people shooting over here for this landing pad. This is a very difficult shot because you have to have enough topspin to clear the gap from this landing area to get to the green and clear this sand. But just enough. If you have too much topspin on there, you'll end up shooting through the green and you'll end up in this sand trap on the other side. You'll end up in this sand. Or you'll end up clipping it up here. And typically, not all the time, I mean, I've seen people hole-in-one it from over here. But this does give you a legitimate shot to get onto the green. It is a very, very tricky shot. And in most cases, you will see people end up in the sand. Either this sand or this sand. The other way to go with this is to come out here and try and get your ball so that it's clear of these trees. It doesn't matter where you're at on the other side of that line. I mean, you could be out here as long as you're clear from those trees and you can come at the hole this way. The problem with this green is here's the flagpole. So here's the flagpole, and here's the top of the green, and here's the bottom of the green, and the green is like this. It's a very, very steep hill. So if you're at an angle out here when you're shooting, you're going to have to negotiate the side hill to get it to the hole, and there's going to be some drops. So not only are you going to have to factor in the wind when you're down in this area, you're going to have to account for that drop as well. The further out here you can get, and the straighter the shot is to the hole, you're going up the hill, you can eliminate some of that side hill drop. But it's a tricky shot from down here, even though you're really close and it's usually minimum short iron. It's a very, very tricky shot from down there. This is one of the few holes, if not the only hole in this game where, for me, the shot is as I hit into these trees. And so I'm just trying to blast it through the trees. There is a gap right here. When you're playing this hole, there's a gap in between here and there's a gap in between here. There are some gaps that are up in this front area, but I usually try and stay away from those because I find that if you try and shoot this gap up here, you will end up in the sand, and the trees are thicker down here. So if you only barely make it in, you're still in the trees. Whereas if you come for the lower ones, these lower gaps that are in here, typically what will happen is you'll end up right out here on the rough. So you can see the rough patch right here. You're going to end up somewhere out in that area. Now it might be worth bringing a big topper here and a bigger ball so that you've got a lot of topspin so that you can try and roll that ball out of here and get it up here on the flat. When you're up here and you can actually blast through that rough, you have a real good shot. But this rough shot here is very consistent. The only thing it boils down to is you have to hit the shot perfect and you've got an eagle. So I usually like to take this shot here just because every single time I come to this hole I give myself a legitimate eagle shot. Sometimes when you're over here you're in the sand, sometimes you're in the rough, sometimes you might be on the green, and so it's very inconsistent what you're going to be doing if you're taking this shot over here. This shot right here, even if I'm in the rough, every time I'm in the rough, I shoot the shot. I'm in the rough, I shoot the shot. I'm in the rough, so you can try and dial that shot in. I have shot this. The last tournament we were in, I just was not having any luck on this hole. And I did shoot it down here just to see if I could change my luck. And you get a great shot from down here, but I would much rather take this shot from the rough. So when you're on this hole, try out all 3 of those and see which one works best for your game and your clubs. But this is definitely a hole that you need to be picking up an eagle at least once during a round. So I'm going to make a note here on my cheat sheet. We need an eagle on that hole. Eagle. And hole number 1, we need a hole in one. All right, hole number 3. Hole number 1, we need an albie. Excuse me. Need an albie. Alright, hole number 3 is the first par 3 we're going to encounter here. And I do not have this video, I don't have this hole recorded. Even though I've played this hole a bunch of times, I don't have a video of this. And I can't, you don't have to make huge adjustments on this. It's very uphill. So if you short shoot it, you're going to end up rolling down the hill, and it's very easy to overshoot it. And if you overshoot it, you end up in that sand. So the first time I encounter this in either in the qualifying rounds or if I can get it in a practice round, I'll shoot a video for this one and add it to the playlist, because I'm not sure on this hole exactly which clubs we're going to be using or what kind of adjustments we'll be making until I can get to it for the first time. Sorry about that. All right, hole number 4. This is the big par 5. Excuse me, big par 4. And we need an eagle. We need to go for eagle. Go for eagle. All right, there's a couple ways to play this. If you're playing in one-on-one and you have any kind of a headwind or any kind of wind that's coming towards you at all, it's hard to get over onto this landing spot. If you've got tailwind, or even if you've got some side winds that give you some forward push, this side over here is probably, this is the way to go if you're trying to get on the green so that you can have that either short chip in or a putt for eagle. So what people are going to do is they're going to, whatever ball you've got that'll get you out into this area, and what you're trying to do is bounce from this area to this area to this area. So you're trying to hopscotch it across those landing pads and to get it on the green. And you'll find that if you hit this shot perfect and everything went the way you want, there's a lot of times you're going to end up right out here in this area, and you could end up in this rough, so you'll be taking this type of a shot. But that nice little short little chip in, if you've got the right clubs, is definitely going to give you a legitimate shot at eagle every time if you can consistently land in this area. What's tricky about this shot is that you have to have, in order to get it to bounce from here to here and then clear to bounce to here, your trajectory has to be absolutely perfect. So if you land here and you're off just a little bit, you know, your trajectory when you come to this one's going to put you off. And so a lot of times what you're going to do is you may hit this pad fine, but you end up in the rough here, or you end up in the rough in front, or you end up in the sand because your trajectory was just a little off when you went to bounce it to this landing spot. So while this side over here does give you a shot to get on in one, it's a very, very difficult shot, and it's very tricky. So it's not going to be uncommon to come here and nail it and end up going, yeah, I got an eagle. And then the next time you come here and you epic fail and you end up in the sand, or you end up, that's one of the risks over here. We're going to, in rookie, we shouldn't have any risk really of ending up outside or in out of bounds. You know, we should be able to get to this pad fairly easy in rookie, especially if you're using a big enough ball. The other way to come at this, if you don't like that shot or you're just not having any consistency with that shot, is to come out into this area out here and then coming towards the hole. Now, I put a video in this playlist of this hole, and if you're coming out into this area and coming at the hole, you have very little green to work with here. So more than likely you're going to end up, you want to bring, if you're going to shoot this shot out here, you need to bring a long iron. You need to bring clubs with backspin. So this is definitely a hole, if your shot is out into this area, I would definitely bring all of my backspin clubs. I would bring, you know, a Guardian, even though you're not going to use it, just in case you ended up too far back. And I would bring my Saturn, I would bring a Thorn, I would bring a Houdini, I would bring, because if you end up in the rough out here, you're going to need that next club. You want every club you have to be a backspin club. So if you end up in the sand out here, you end up in the rough out here, You end up in the fairway, you have a backspin club to get you on the hole. This green from this angle over here, if you're shooting at it from this angle coming at the hole like this, you can see the transitions. Here's the fringe, here's the fairway, here's the rough, and they're very tight right here. And the wind adjustment or the ring adjustment that you're going to make when you're coming at the hole from this direction, for me, is different. There's a couple holes in this game that I do the same thing I'm doing here, is that I will adjust for the wind and then I will move it one cut back towards the green. So for instance, here's the green, here's the fringe, here's the fairway, here's the rough, and I started my ball off right here on the fairway, and I made a wind adjustment and I pulled the ball over here. I will move the bullseye back towards the green one cut. So if the wind was blowing in this direction and I wanted to start my ball off right here, and I moved it this way in order to account for the wind, when I'm done, I'm going to move the ball one cut forward, which is a ring and a half, 2 rings. And for whatever reason, watch the video. I mean, I know it sounds strange, but watch the video and see how I made the wind adjustments on this hole. It's a very tricky hole, because what will happen is if you don't do that, you're going to end up clipping the rough here. It's going to push you back one cut, and you're going to clip this rough, and it'll stop the ball right up here, or it'll hold the ball and you'll end up in the sand. And now you're taking this very short shot for birdie from the rough, and that's not good. You want to be on the green when you're taking if you don't make that shot, you want to be on the green taking a putt for your birdie, not having to shoot out of the rough. So if you're coming from over here, it is very tricky to get your ball to stay on the green. Hole number 5. All right, this hole right here, there's a lot of so if you don't have a bunch of big balls, you don't have any 4-power or 5-power balls, and you've got some underdeveloped clubs, this is a great hole for a quarterback, because a quarterback has lots of curl and it has good topspin. And what you can do is you can come, let me pull back just a little here. So from the tee box to this, if I can get my pen to work, from the tee box to this green, let's draw that straight line out here. That's the straight line, and we want to end up over here. So we've got to make this angle up to get up into this area. So what you can do is bring your ball guide out here so that you're giving yourself plenty of room on the inside and the outside for your quarterback to get into this area, and you're going to use pretty much max topspin, max left-hand side spin, and you're going to put in curl, so that when you get to this spot, the ball then takes that jump and ends up landing out in this area somewhere. This is a tricky shot from out in this area. So if you're anywhere out here, if you're out in this area out here and you're in the rough, you're in big trouble. You have to be in the fairway if you're taking this shot in order to have any hope of getting on in 2, and it is a very long shot. So a sniper is going to put you in your red line about here, and you're going to have to maneuver. What's difficult about this hole is you're trying to go around this bend to the left, but then you need to immediately make sure your ball stays to the left. So if you're shooting out into this area, that's your plan, then your second club, your wood club, needs to be the longest one you have in the bag. You need a big wood club in order to make sure that you can get this. You want your landing spot with your club to be here, so that with topspin you're already up towards the green, so you don't have to do a lot of curl in order to make the bend. The other way to play this hole, and the way that I will be playing this hole, is you can play this with a 3-power ball. You could also play this with, if you had a 4 or a 5-power ball, those balls are just going to make it easier for you. So if you're using a 4-power ball, what your goal is that when you're from the tee box, you're going to be coming out towards these trees with a max overpower, max left-hand side spin. Typically in these tournaments, the wind's coming, we've got a fairly favorable wind, and what you're trying to do is land out in this area and trying to blow through this rough and trying to get up to here. Now, if you bring a big enough ball, you can bring your ball all the way up into this area. Although I find that this shot from up here, if you shoot this shot and you're finding that your ball's ending up in this area, this is a very difficult shot. You're going to need clubs with backspin on them in order to be able to clear to get onto the green. It's very, very difficult. So if you're coming up here and you're shooting those shots, you want to make sure, and you're ending up in this area, you want to make sure you bring the right clubs in your bag in order to help you. And the first time you land out here, the first time you play this hole, if you want to see what the look is just shoot your shot. Don't even worry about going to the hole. Just shoot your shot out here so that you can see what this shot looks like, and you'll understand real quickly that this is a very difficult shot. You either want to be way up here, or it's not, just being able to clear it and just being down here. This shot, if you just barely clear it and end up in the rough out here, you get a very nice shot to the green. Very nice shot. And from over here, if you bring a Saturn, and a Saturn's going to work really well from up here too, you do have a legitimate shot at trying to do a dunk. For Albie, this is not a high percentage albatross hole. I've seen people get albatross on this hole, but it's not a high percentage albatross. I think I've gotten at least one albatross on this hole. So I mean, it can be done, but it is a very, very difficult hole. There's going to be a lot of people in this tournament that do not get eagles on this hole. So if you can consistently come to this hole with whatever shot that you have, and you can get an eagle from down here. If you're shooting a quarterback and laying your ball up here and then coming in, if you bring the right clubs and you bring the right ball to help you out, this is a very eagleable hole every single time you come to it. But there's going to be a bunch of people that aren't going to get eagle. Now, the one thing I do like about the overpower shot where you're trying to hook and get up into here is that in a worst case scenario, you end up in the rough out here. From here, you can get on with a Nirvana. But I'm pretty sure you're only going to be able to get on if you have a Nirvana. So if you don't have a Nirvana, you probably want to stay away from that rough. Hole number 6. All right, this par 3 right here, and I can't believe, I think I have this hole recorded. Do I have this recorded? Yep, I have this hole recorded. This hole right here, hold on. Oh, that felt good. So, sorry about that. So this hole right here, there's 3 ways to come at it. You can come at it from over here, which I'm not a fan of. I see people do this all the time, but I'm not really a fan of coming at it from this direction. I think the shot from over here is harder, and I don't think your chances of getting a hole-in-one or getting really close to the hole are increased by coming over here. The other way to do it is you can come and you can land your ball up here and then bring it up to the hole, so you bounce over the sand. I'm also not a fan of doing this shot. And the reason is I just put the sand into play, and it's a very tricky wind adjustment when you're in that area. Hold on. So when you're in that area, it's a very tricky wind adjustment. If I can get to the right page here. And I'm not sure why my brush keeps going away. But this area down here has a very tricky wind adjustment. And I see a lot of people who take this shot who end up clipping that rough or end up just like bouncing into the sand. So it's very important that you dial in the adjustment for this area down here. And then even if you get this right, if you didn't have your top spin set up correctly for this hill, you get about anything below this line and it will roll down that hill. And there's a good chance that once it starts rolling, it's going to end up in the sand. So I'm not necessarily a fan. I don't like this shot. I've tried this shot in the front, but I just find that this adjustment's just too tricky. You know, you could get it, and if you've got headwind, it's going to knock the ball down, and so I'm not a fan necessarily of taking this. The other way you can do, and you can do this in rookie, is you can come here and try and backspin it directly onto the hole. So you can start off up at the top and try and backspin it into the hole. Now this shot right here on this hole will give you a pretty nice shot at a hole-in-one, but if you start that ball off and it misses the hole and starts rolling down this hill, once again, you can end up in the sand. Or if you clip if it's so steep right here, when you hit this transition for that first bounce, if you hit it a little too far down the hill, the ball will bounce straight up in the air and end up right down here in the sand. So that shot does give you a pretty good look at hole-in-one, but it's also a dangerous shot. The shot that I'll normally take on this hole is going to be right up in this area, and depending on the club that I have, I'm going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 rings, usually my blue ring, off from the edge. And then from that point, I'm going to just dial it in. I'm going to put in some backspin and left-hand side spin and literally dial the ball guide so that the ball guide's going right at the hole. When I take the shot, I'm not using any curl. I'm not using any overpower. I'm just going to take the shot and let it do its thing, because this hill right here is so steep that when the ball hits, it's going to want to bounce. It's going to want to hop going in this direction. And so we're going to just dial that ball in so that it's going right towards the hole and take the shot straight up. No overpower, no curl, no nothing. And try and get close to that hole. While this hole has good, there's a good opportunity to get a hole-in-one here, like there is on any of the par 3s, but this is a difficult hole to hole-in-one. There is a lot of stuff going on just because of how you have to hit, and when you put your ball up here, you can see how much movement that ball has. So while this is a hole-in-one shot, it's not something that you can, try and dial in to get right every time. There's 2 ways to go with this. The best way is to bring a quarterback and whatever ball you have to bring in order to start your landing over here without any overpower. So if you bring a quarterback, what's going to help you there is an extra mile. The thing about an extra mile is that if you look at your landing area down here and how narrow it is, an extra mile, if you hit it great to the left or the right, this is so narrow. There was the perfect shot. You hit it great to the left or the right, you may land here. But on that second bounce to get up here, now you're riding along this edge, and as the ball rolls forward, it's very easy to end up in the rough or end up down here in the rough on either side. If you're down here in the rough, you're in trouble. If you're up here in the rough, you can still bounce it off from here and get on the green and go for birdie. This is another hole that's very difficult to get an eagle on, but it is eagleable. So what you want to do is you want to get your ball in this area down here at the end. And so you have 2 different ways that you can come at the hole. You can do the bounce over where you're bouncing from this landing pad and bouncing it over, or you're trying to do a rough bump. But like one of the holes earlier where you've got green, fringe, fairway, rough, and you've got these little teeny transitional marks, there is a very tough wind adjustment or an adjustment that you have to make down here if you're going to bounce it. If you're not going to bounce it over, you're going to try and start over here and do the rough bump to get it in. It is a very tricky wind adjustment. So you'll have to practice that to see what that is. And I think it's very similar to the earlier hole where we're going to make our adjustment and then we're going to move it back towards the cup. 1 cut or a half a cup. We'll have to dial that one in as the week goes on. Excuse me. That's definitely a hole that we want to work on that second shot. Now the other way to come at this hole, and during one-on-one play when I'm playing just regular one-on-one, this is how I normally play this hole. I like to bring a quarterback on this hole. I think this hole is very good for a quarterback because the drive here is so tricky to get you to the spot, to get you to that spot, to get you to that spot. So with a quarterback, the other shot is to come out into this area right here. Your ball guide's going to be going, let's get out so you can see if we draw a line here you can see where our ball guide's going. Our ball wants to go in this area and we need to cut the gap to get it up to here because our landing spot's going to be out here. So we need to fill this angle to get our ball to come up. We need to be, ideally we want to be somewhere between these shadows. If you're a little past this shadow, that's fine. The further past you can get it, if you're out in here, but you don't need to get that far. Anywhere between these 2 shadows right here, you have an excellent shot at the green. So the look's going to be is you're gonna, so if you were in this area, you've got this look right here, and your landing spot's gonna be off of the green. I would, in day-to-day play, I bring a Guardian on this hole so I can do max backspin, max right-hand side spin, and then I put on max curl. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to backspin curl the ball in onto the green to go towards the cup. This tree right here is in play. So if you take this shot down here and you're in this spot, you cannot apply any curl unless you're applying so much curl that you can work your way around the tree. So I mean, obviously if you got down further, you can work your way around the tree, and that shot, you know, now you're actually trying to go more for the green. But it's very difficult to get way down in here, and a lot of times you're going to end up in the rough. Now you can still make it from the rough down here because you can do the same thing. Now you don't have to worry about the tree. You can come out into this area and just dribble it down onto the green. Day to day, this is definitely how I play. It's very consistent. You don't end up in the rough. You don't take any of these chances, and I don't have to use a big ball. You can use a marlin over here. During the tournament, though, I'm going to be wanting to get up in here. I'm going to try and get whatever ball I have to use to get my quarterback so that my landing spot, my first hit, is out here in the middle of this area, preferably the widest part of this area. And then we'll work on topspin, backspin in order to get our ball to stop up here in the front. Now there is a third shot, and this shot right here is you're starting on the fairway and you're wanting your first bounce. You're wanting to hit so that you can get out into this area. You want to be on this pad so that you're doing a short iron shot or a wedge to get into the green. And what you're going to do is you're going to do a max overpower hook shot. And so you want your ball to be out into this area, and you're going to move this direction, find your spot, and do that max overpower to try and get it towards the hole. That's a shot you'll definitely have to practice to find out what your landing zone is. So the first time you come, if you're interested in seeing what that shot looks like, you know, set your ball up and just come out here and find a cut and take the shot and see what happens, and you can keep dialing it in. I think you could probably do that with just a normal ball. You could probably do it with just a Titan, maybe a Kingmaker. Kingmaker, the difference there is that whatever ball you're practicing with, that's the ball you need to use, because the difference between the 3-side spin and the 2-side spin is going to make a difference on where you set up to try and do that shot. But there is a max overpower hook shot that you can do to try and get up here. The thing I don't like about that shot, what I like about it is if you make it, you're in a beautiful spot. Beautiful. But if you don't make it, you don't know where you're going to be, and you put a lot of this stuff into play. And this right here is a hole that's going to ruin a lot of people's tournaments. While we'd like to get eagle, this hole can be very difficult just to get birdie, and there's going to be a lot of people in this tournament. I would say there's going to be more people that get par than get eagle. So if you can come here and you've got a nice easy birdie, that's why this shot over here, you're not taking hardly any risks at all. You put your ball out here anywhere in between these two shadows, you have a nice straight in shot with a Guardian, and it's no fuss, no muss, get your birdie and go home. You did have a shot at eagle, although it's anytime you've got to do side spin, backspin, and all that, you're lowering your risk that it will go in the hole unless it's just pure luck. You have a better shot of getting the eagle if you're out in this area right here. But if you're finding that you're having a hard time with your clubs and the equipment that you're bringing, you're having a hard time consistently landing on the fairway out here, then bring your quarterback and consistently land on the fairway out here. You have more fairway to work with. I mean, we want to get eagle on this hole, but we have to get birdie. We have to get birdie. This hole's going to ruin a lot of people's tournaments. All right, hole number 8. This is definitely a hole-in-oneable shot. Now, originally, this hole has been reconfigured. There's a hill here, and it goes down this slope. So you can land your ball up here, and it'll roll around, and it's going to end up down by the hole. It'll trickle down there. I've never been a fan, really, of trying to land in a spot where I'm then hoping that the slope will bring me back towards the hole. I think the best way to go at this, if you want to get a legitimate shot at hole-in-one, is to go straight at it, where you're trying to land out in this area and just bring it right to the hole. So you're not letting allowing the slope to affect it, because what's going to happen is on this slope, as it falls down, it's going to fall faster, and the ball guide's going to change. So it's going to fall below, and you're going to end up being low a lot. I like this type of shot. I like to be consistent. And the thing is that you can put your ball anywhere out in this area, not in the sand, but anywhere out in this area here, and end up very close to the green every time. Okay, it's just all about, whatever you put on there as far as backspin and topspin. I like to find a spot when I'm shooting these types, when I'm on these types of holes, so that every time I'm super consistent. So for me, if I come here with a Saturn, I've got my blue ring wedged where the outside of my blue ring is right up against the sand, and the outside of my blue ring is right up against the rough fringe cut. And so I'm wedged into this spot so that my landing spot here is very consistent. And then it's all about dialing in the top spin, back spin, side spin. And on this hole, you're going to use about 2.5 to 3 side spin and about 2.5 to 3 back spin for this shot right here, this setup shot, so that we're coming into this area and then it's just falling down to the hole. You can come here a little bit if you've got a lot of ball guide on your club. You can come here and put on a little bit more backspin and try and get it going straight at the hole, trying to get it to the point where when the ball hits here and rolls forward, the slope's not making the ball drop. Another way to do it is you can start out here and come at it where you're just putting a little bit, just minor adjustments, just a little bit of backspin, little bit of side spin. But there are a bunch of areas out here that you can use as a landing spot and just dial it in. But whatever area you pick out here, try and pick an area where you have some point of reference. So I like this shot because I can come here every time and put my ball, wedge my ball in those areas. So in one-on-one play, typically I will bring a Saturn, and so I know exactly what the setup is. This is definitely a good hole for a backbone because you get a little more accuracy with the backbone, but the rings are a little smaller. So when you do your setup out here, you may not be on the blue ring. You may be on the clear ring. The clear ring wedged up against the rough, clear ring wedged up against the fringe. And that'll change your setup for your ball to come here as far as side spin and backspin. But whatever spot you pick out here, try and pick a spot that you can get in that same spot every single time. So every single time, especially in one-on-one play, every single time you're less than a yard away. Every single time you were that close. And this is definitely a shot that, of all of the par threes in this tournament, this is the one that has the best hole-in-one opportunity. Hole number 9. Now there's 2 ways to come at this hole. Way number 1 is to try and bounce over from this area right here and end up with your second bounce here and then dribbling up and ending up somewhere out in this area. Now from here, you work, and it can be a difficult shot to get up into this area. What I don't like about this shot is while you get closer to the green, your angle to the pin, let's say you hit the perfect shot and you were out here in the front, your angle to the pin, you're going to have to negotiate around this to get around the sand. And if you're too far up here, then you really got to negotiate to get around it. So ideally, the lower you are into this pocket, the better. You don't have a lot of green to work with here, so you either need to dribble it on, or you need to do a rough bump, or you need this club to have a lot of backspin and try and backspin it into the hole. So this is definitely a great shot to bring a Guardian, your Saturn, all of your backspin clubs. So depending on how far you can get out here, you can start off on the back side of this sand, take this trap completely out of play and try and backspin that into the hole. The other way you can come at this hole is to come out into this area. So if you come out into this area, you're going to be bouncing from here, trying to negotiate up, and this area out here, I mean, look how skinny that is. This is a very tricky shot with an extra mile. You start off into this area out here and you hit it perfect, you could end up right where you want. You hit it great to the left or the right, once it takes that first bounce from here, that grate to the left or the right is going to come into play, and it's very, very, very easy to end up in the rough out here, and you have no shot if you end up in the rough out here. So coming to this side, your second shot is a lot better. You know, you have a much cleaner, I mean, look at the path to the green here. You've got all of the green to work with. The green is tiered. So there's a lower level on the green, and then the cup is actually up on the upper level. So it's still a difficult approach to go from over here, but you do have a lot more maneuverability and a lot more room to work with when you nail this shot. So if you want a really good approach to get to the green, this is a great way to do it, is to come out into this area. Ideally, you want to, if you can bring your quarterback and whatever ball it takes in order for you to be able to get your quarterback to go from here over to here, you're going to have a lot more success if you use your quarterback, because you're going to end up in the fairway here instead of ending up in the rough a lot more often, because it's so much more accurate. And this hole right here is going to be a hole that's there's a bunch of holes in this tournament that are going to eat people's lunch. It's very easy to make a mistake here. You end up in the rough anywhere up in the front. You end up anywhere in the rough over here. You can't get on in two. You just blew your shot, your legitimate shot, even for eagle. So this is once again one of those holes that everybody came in with the best intentions trying to go for an Albie, and they end up with a par. Or they end up with a birdie. And we don't want that to happen. We want to do whatever it takes to be very consistent here. And while this shot gives us a better approach coming into the green, we may find that we just like this shot out here. You know, you come out here, go low on the green. Don't try and press the issue. Secure your eagle and go home. But if you really want to press the issue, and you're coming over here, if I decide that I'm going to come over here in the tournament, I'm probably going to bring backspin clubs so that I can start off my second shot on the other side of this sand and eliminate this sand from play. I may come over here and decide that this is the shot, but I think consistency-wise, you know, if you come over here and you epic fail, you end up in the rough, you're done. Whereas this shot out here might be an easier shot to do this, and it'll just be almost a layup. We don't want to have to do a lot of effort here. It's a very tricky wind adjustment when you're down in this area. You got to make sure, especially when we're dealing, if we have tailwind on this hole, that we don't end up, it flies a little bit farther than what the ball guy says. So make sure that when you're down here that you give yourself lots of room. Don't put the center of your bullseye right up close to the fringe or to the first rough cut, and then if you don't make a good wind adjustment, you end up clipping the rough and you end up just laying up down here in the rough. That's bad, really bad. Okay, give yourself lots of room on this so that if you don't make a really good wind adjustment. What in the heck just happened? Oh, it's the other one I'm working on. All right, that was hole number 9. So let's kind of just recap here real quick. Hole number 1. This is definitely a hole that we need to get an eagle on. And we have a legitimate shot. So this is a -2 hole. And we have a legitimate shot here for Albie. So, but we've got to get the eagle. This is another hole. You know, it's not a hole that you're going to get eagle on every time, but this is a hole that you want to strive to get eagle at least once in every round. At least every other time you come to this hole, you want to get an eagle, because this hole right here is going to separate people from the top. All right, sorry about that. So hole number 2, we're looking at a -1, and we're trying to pick up an eagle at least once every other round. So I'm going to put this as a -1.5. This is a variable hole. This hole right here, we're definitely looking for just -1. We're looking for -1 on all these par 3s. Hole number 4, this par 4, this is once again, it's a -1 hole. It's a birdie hole with an eagle opportunity. This is a very tough eagle. So for those that get an eagle on this hole, I would say there's going to be that many more people. The thing is as long as you don't end up in the drink or you don't end up out of bounds out here, you can get on in two and then shoot for birdie. So you can secure birdie fairly easy here, but the approach to the green is going to eat a lot of people's lunch, and you're going to see a lot of people ending up short in the rough out here and then missing that birdie shot. So don't take this hole for granted. It is an absolutely tough eagle, but it can be an absolutely tough birdie. So making sure you secure your birdie on this hole is goal number one, and if you can pick up the eagle, then more power to you. But it's definitely going to be a -1 hole. Hole number 5, this par 5 is definitely eagleable. You've got to get an eagle on this hole. And once again, there are holes in this tournament that are going to eat people's lunch, and this is going to be one of those holes. If you don't have the ball or the clubs in order to do a max overpower shot to get out here to try and bridge this gap, even if you end up in the rough, you can make this shot with a Nirvana if you've got a big enough ball. If you can't make this shot, you don't have the clubs, you don't have the balls to burn in order to do this, and you've got to do the wrap around the trees to get out into this area. It's definitely a layup shot to get out here, and you definitely want to bring the biggest wood in your bag in order to make this transition. But this is going to be a lot of holes that a hole that a lot of people are not going to get eagle on, and it is going to eat a lot of people's lunch. So we have to get an eagle on this hole every time, every single time we come to it. Hole number 6. This is definitely a -1 hole. It's a birdie hole. Hole number 7. While we have an eagle shot on this hole, it's very important to secure your eagle. This is another hole that's going to eat a lot of people's lunch. A lot of people are going to come here with high hopes of getting an eagle, and you're going to walk away with a par. It's going to ruin a lot of people's tournaments. There's 3 holes now that it's the same way. Once again, we're in a -1 hole, any of the par 3s. But this hole right here does give you your best shot at hole-in-one of all the par 3s. This is the hole that you really want. If you're looking at the par 3s and you're trying to dial one of them in so that you can increase your odds of getting a hole-in-one, this is the shot. This is the hole right here to work on. Hole number 9. This is a birdie or an eagle hole with a shot at albatross. There is an albatross shot, but once again, you have very little green to work with up here for that second shot. So you do have a better approach to the green from coming over here, but even from over here, it's still a difficult hole to eagle, to get an albatross on. So we really just want to make sure we secure that eagle every time. So if we count the holes here, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're looking at somewhere in the 12.5 range is what we want to be shooting per round. So if you're shooting a 12 per round, that's a pretty clean round. That's not picking anything extra up. That's not doing anything spectacular. Of all the par 4s, hole number 2 gives you your best shot at a legitimate eagle every time you roll around. That's why it's important that we try and pick that up at least once. We're going to play that hole twice during the round. We want to pick it up at least once. That should be our set goal, is to try and get that at least once every round. If you can get a 13 on one side and a 12 on the other and you shoot that 25, that 1 point is going to separate you from a lot of people when you're doing this tournament. This is going to be a very, very rough tournament on a lot of people. So if we're shooting the 12, 12.5 is looking at like what we want to see for our average round, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be shooting a lot lower scores than that. So being consistent is going to be the key here. All right, that was the Gridiron tournament. Just a walkthrough of all the holes, and we'll continue. I'll continue to play when the qualifying rounds come out. I'll try and play on Monday. I'll play 2 rounds and I'll post them, and on Tuesday I'll try and play 2 rounds and post them. And on Wednesday I'll play a round and post it so that we can see these holes in action. And I'll continue to work on my notes and trying to dial these in for the weekend round. Thanks for watching.